So today's proposition is gonna be God exists. The two affirmative debaters will be Cap and CH. They'll be debating against Ernest and Smoothie. The relevant judge and moderator are gonna be Griff from the KG Lounge. Let's get right into it.
All right, I'll put the argument in the side chat. This is the KG ontological argument for God. This argument me and Kyle have been beating the fuck out of these low tiers with this argument. So let me know what premise you guys reject in the argument.
Let me look at this shit. What did you put it?
Yeah, it's in the side chat of the voice chat. It's in the side chat.
Thank you.
Also, the preliminary definition, we're going to be defining God as a necessary being, full stop.
Only a necessary being.
So you take God to be a necessary being. So is that going to be any set of necessary beings, like any particular of those, like that set? Or like it's going to be like, one person in particular?
We just defined it.
If something satisfies the definitional characteristic of necessary, then that referent is God.
It seems to be equivocal though, because the referent you refer to, which is necessary, they consider that trait of being necessary, have distinct properties, and those two properties can contradict each other. So you can't really use that with your definition. It's going to be equivocal.
Any reference that satisfies the definitional characteristic is God. Right? And the argument has an existential proposition, which just shows that there's at least one necessary thing in the world. Therefore, there's at least one God in the world. Right?
That's so the argument proves that the possibility towards contradiction, because these two mechanisms are being could be they can share necessary traits. Hold on, retard. I don't know why he's cutting me off. Anyways, right? There can be necessary being, more than one in fact, right? They can be distinct insofar that other properties contradict each other. So it's going to be the case. It has to be one particular one that's compatible with reality. What do you mean they cannot? What? It's not logically possible. How's that going to be the case?
Yeah, it's not logically possible for there to be some referent with contradictory properties intrinsic to the being. Right, that's obviously not logically possible, given that contradictions
that's not what I'm talking about.
Conflict with the axioms of classical logic. So, what are you talking about when you say that there can be these things? Because I just reject that there can be.
I'm saying it has to be one particular one, because the reference themselves, whatever group of reference exists, it contradict each other. Right, so you choose one's compatible with the world, right, and not any other one to fit that criterion.
Wait, why can I not just be committed to saying that anything that's necessary is God? Why can't there be multiple gods?
Because again, I told you. That's in virtue of the proposition, right? It's going to be multiple beings, right? They can share the property insofar they're necessary, yet other properties they have that are distinct and contradict each other. In that sense, it's going to be equivocal to refer to the same thing within a given concept. So there can't be multiple in that sense, right? It has to be one particular one. And that's the entire point, which you're not tracking.
Look, we could hold that necessary. We could hold that God's going to be some type of proper class where if X is necessary, then X is in that class. That's fine.
If X is necessary,
that doesn't really attack what I'm saying, though. Look, I can rephrase it, right?
Are you just saying that there could be some necessary being with the intrinsic property of being red, then some necessary being with the intrinsic property of being blue, and therefore it's going to lead to some contradiction?
Yeah. So if you're proving, the entire point is that if you're proving a necessary being exists, at least one, right? Again, right, the references themselves can contradict each other, so it has to be a particular one, or else the possibility of contradiction is going to be there.
Why does that
hold on, wait. Let me just break this down real quick. Look, if the referent satisfies the definitional characteristic, then the referent is God, right? And now you want to say, well, look, I don't see the problem with there being a red God and a blue God, right? Because all that's meant by God is a necessary being, right? So I don't see the problem with there being
I don't know why you didn't hear me grant the trait being shared being necessity.
Hold on, stop. What's going to be the problem?
That's what satisfies it.
Two gods with contradictory intrinsic properties to their beings. What's going to be the problem with that?
The thing is, you're taking God to be, any necessary being from this particular set, or at least one of them, right? Shut the fuck up, nigga. Why are you cutting me off? Damn. Anyways, right? It just means at least one being that's necessary, right? The thing is, if a referent, there can be multiple of the same referent, right? They should have traded being like necessary. It could be the case that these referents contradict each other, right? So again, that's be one particular one instead of two at the same time. It can't be possible that's two at the same time.
Nobody said
you said at least one. That's my guy. What?
To clarify,
your reference is necessary trait.
Let me just clarify this real quick. Nobody said there's more than one referent, right? But I don't understand the problem with there being more than one referent that have this characteristic.
Look, the reason why, hold on, like, first, I'm just gonna, like, let Smoothie go first. He was to talk.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Smoothie, you can speak. Just say the problem and fulfill the burden that Capp
I just wasn't listening. What is your definition of necessity?
Wait, maybe Ernest can fulfill the burden.
Necessary just means that the reference is instantiated in all possible worlds and the reference is eternal.
Reference is instantiated in all possible worlds. Why is that the case?
That's just it. That's just true by the analytics. You asked me to give you the
That's the
definition.
definition, but hold on.
We
The
just
entire
gave you the
thing.
definition.
No. Chill. Look,
Justify our
I
definition.
understand.
That's what we're
No, wait,
saying there.
it's chill, nigga. I understand that y'all are saying that the analytic of necessary is being true in all possible worlds. But I'm asking why should we accept, or why is it motivating to accept that God is existing or God is necessary in that sense?
Yeah, well, we have the argument that shows that there is a being like that.
The argument which I gave is compatible with God being like necessary in one world.
Well, that wouldn't even be. That's logically impossible. Like if
How is that logically impossible?
You just wouldn't hold the classical modality. How's it impossible?
To be a
That's
necessary
just illogical.
thing that if it exists in one world, exists in all worlds, right? Given the analytics.
given it's a necessary being.
Look, we just deny S5 just because
The argument doesn't need S5.
But you're saying that
S5.
why is he just?
Wait, could you tell me
Nigga
why?
just
how
he like an echo
S5?
chamber, nigga Capp. Look,
Did I?
hold on.
It's like a Batman and Robin on the same.
He's like, this nigga's necessary. Yeah, that nigga's necessary. The argument don't need S5. Yeah, it don't need S5.
Hey, put your pom-poms down, fuck nigga.
I mean, y'all can just critique what Capp you're saying instead of like trying to
hold on, wait. Again, like, look,
you can just critique what we're saying.
Let's address the substance, right? So we say necessary. What type of necessity are you talking about?
I can hear what you said.
Hold on. What type of necessity are you talking about before we get into anything else?
We already gave
what type of necessity? What type of necessity? Stop rambling all this shit.
I'm unclear on what the type talk is doing here because we're using necessity indexed towards the reference instantiated in all possible worlds, and the modality is logical.
Okay, so logical necessity, that's about it. So then what do you mean by being if you talk about logical necessity?
What do I mean by being?
Like just define being, yeah.
Yeah, being is just going to be something that exists or has ontic.
Has ontology?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how would something you demonstrate on this modal table have ontology? Like, what do you think ontology is?
Well, ontology just
because all you can say is that like existence just talks about. All you can just say is that when you talk about something being necessary, logically speaking, it's misconceivable in some sense, given the laws of logic itself, right? It doesn't mean that itself has. Doesn't mean that thing itself has ontology or participates in reality.
Look, I just
so
take
from
ontology.
Type of necessity.
Well, it seems to me like you're asking a meta-ontological question. Now, my meta-ontology is going to be the informational structural realism type meta-ontology. And all that's being said there is that what it means to have ontic, or what it means to exist, is that there's some information which can be predicated upon the subject, right? Some property, characteristic, or attribute, right, which can be attributed to the subject, and that's all that means. Also, I'm unclear because it seems to be like ontic was already.
That really demonstrates it being a precondition towards existence. That's a necessary condition.
Also,
another thing that's what it means. So that's just gonna be incoherent.
And also, the entailment of your argument does.
That's what it means to exist in my view.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
But in your view, it just means it has some property or traits.
Possible worlds
it just means there's something that can be predicated upon the subject, some information.
Okay, so how could okay. So a thing that can be predicated upon the subject. So like you're saying existence itself can be predicated upon God.
What? That doesn't follow.
No, we're not committed to saying
it. You said it's a predicate.
We're not committed to saying that existence is a predicate, right? What it means to have existence is that something can be predicated upon you. You need to start tracking this conversation.
Look, yeah. Hold on.
You started speaking like actual English, not niggalese. It's gonna be hard.
Anyways, hold on. It seems like my question is not being answered, which is.
Oh no, we're having a conversation.
I understand that you're having a conversation, but my question was
asking the
conversation. Look, the question again is why do we have to accept S5? Your argument does entail S5.
The argument does not use S5. Look, let me explain. Hold on, wait. I'm going to explain why the argument doesn't use S5.
Go ahead.
It's logically possible that the argument goes through if no S5 theorem exists. And if you reject that, right, because you're making the claim that it is the case that my argument uses S5. So if that were true, then there would be a contradiction in my argument if there was no S5. Right? It would be logically impossible for the argument to go through. So what's the P and not P? That's your burden.
I'm going to break it down.
Yeah, what's the P and not P?
It's necessary in one possible world, then it's necessary in all possible worlds, right? But S5,
what's the P and not P?
Just say motivate the axiom. You have to demonstrate that's not his burden.
You're using for S5 is saying, look.
He said our argument is
necessary. Hold on. If something is necessary, then it exists in all worlds. Mere existing in one world only shows it's possible, not necessary. But the reason why I'm saying that you're saying, like, the reason why I'm saying that you're using S5 is because you're saying that your existence of God is necessary, and what that means that he exists inside of this world. If he exists inside of one world, he exists inside of all possible worlds. He's necessary in all possible worlds.
We don't need the S5. Look,
Thank you.
we
Which
don't need the
S5 in that
S5
system?
system, right? We could just run a reductio into contrary, give it a definition in the analytics.
Uh,
Right? It's actually analytically true. We don't need the S5 theorem. And if you're making the case,
I'm saying
if
the
you're making the
S5 theorem
claim,
is going to be in
hold
reference
on,
to
I'm not finished,
it
plus you're gonna
entailment
sit
of the
back and
claim.
wait. I'm not finished,
I
bitch.
understand that, but
Look,
I'm telling you
if
that
you're
you're wrong.
making the
Why is he
claim,
interrupting my
hold on, wait.
statement?
I don't know why he's interrupting me, but look,
You're
if you're
wrong
making the
already.
claim
You're
that
not
the
tracking what I'm
argument
saying.
does presuppose S5, you
Like,
go
are
have
you?
to give us the contradiction in
I'm
the
not,
argument
no, I'm
going
not
through,
saying that
and
there's a
no
contradiction
S5
with you not
axiom
using
exists,
S5
or
monkey.
no S5
No,
system
I'm not
exists.
saying there's a contradiction with you not using S5 monkey. What I'm saying
Wait,
is
we
that
just
But the
explained to this guy that
argument
you're
does
gonna have
not
to.
need
what I'm
S5
saying,
Maybe
hold
he's
on, calm down,
confused.
hold on, calm down. What I'm saying is that when you induce S5 instead of your
Uh,
argument
uh,
for
uh,
God
uh,
by
uh,
saying
uh.
that God is necessary, if it
That was
what it
rhetorical.
means by God
Wait,
being
we still
necessary.
need the
Hold on, what it
contradiction.
means by God being, I never said that there's a contradiction. Why are you not listening, you fat
Okay, so
idiot?
if there's no
You don't need the
contradiction,
So
then our
when you say
contradiction.
argument
the
That's
can
the
go
entire
through
argument
without
point.
the
I
S5.
said
presupposes
your
So
argument.
then
I
our
said,
S5,
argument can
hold on,
go
hold
through
on.
without
I
the
said your
S5.
argument entails or implies S5.
Wait, no,
I
look,
said your
so our
argument entails
argument can go
S5.
through without the
But
S5
I'm
giving
saying,
us the
so what? Okay, so
contradiction
if you're not
retard.
using
But
I
S5,
don't
hold
know
on,
if
wait,
you're
hold
gonna
Smoothie,
hear
hold
me.
on.
on,
Let's
hold on.
let's
Cap
get
already
into that.
explained to stop me
Hold
talking
on,
Wait,
hold
hold
anyway.
on.
on.
If your
we could
There's
just
no
argument,
use
if you,
contradiction. Get
hold
my
on,
Hey,
too
hold
late.
on, wait,
Wait,
hold on, hold on.
we
Y'all
could
too
just
got
late.
it.
mod,
Got
Calm
it.
we could
down.
Wait,
moderate
moderate the
Okay,
moderate
calm
tone.
down. We need to
I have a
moderate
Cap
the
defeater.
explained
tone.
to
I
you what
have a
Cap
defeater. I
said.
have a
moderator,
He's
defeater.
not
Look,
right.
look.
moderator. Where's
Maybe
the
you
I
can
have a
come
moderator?
to
defeater,
Hold
him
on,
and
right?
hold on. Where are the
actually
Hold
mods?
up. If your
understand what I'm
argument is
saying
simply,
there.
if your
Because
Where
you're
argument
are
is
not
the
simply saying that
concise or
there
moderators?
exists a
excellent. That's
necessary
why.
being,
Moderator.
and what that means is that the necessary being exists in all possible worlds, then I tell you that your argument is compatible with God exists inside of one world and not all worlds. And you said, well, it's logically impossible for
Not
God to be
compatible
necessary
given the
inside of this
analytics.
world and not being necessary inside of all possible worlds. Then that just means that your argument is levying
Smoothie, that's
S5.
not even
But you just
possible.
said that
Okay,
you're
look,
not
I'm
making a
going to wait.
contradiction. It's not contradictory
So
to
look,
say that.
hold on, Smoothie. Stop talking for
Hey,
5 seconds.
Griff, can you let me address what he's saying? Look,
Okay, I didn't realize I was the mod until just now, but I am gonna let Ernest go on because it seems like Ernest was trying to say something.
Hmm.
I was talking before Ernest. It didn't sound like that. You guys just have been spurging for the past minute.
We've been spurging. Okay, that's
CH,
fine.
don't get muted too.
Okay, so look, I'm
the
going. I'm
entire
going to
point
respond.
is to address the
Oh my
Cap.
god.
Is like Cap.
I just
I know
wanted to
you want to
respond to
talk, but
what
like
Smoothie
I have
just
a
talked
point that
about
kind of
anyway.
like I have a point that's kind of like conducive towards Smoothie's point, but it's more substantive. I just want to address that first, right? The entire point is if you assume the X5 axiom is going to be virtue of your argument, the thing is there could be a separate modal system that denies the S5 axiom. So in that sense, the possibility is not going to be there within that system. So we're just saying like why set the other systems right instead of the one system where the S5 axiom is going to be contradictory. Holy shit, speaking too fast. Why accept the system where S5 works or is possible, as opposed to a system where it doesn't and it contradicts the entire system?
Okay,
Like,
so
what's the
here's
objection there
going.
for that system?
Okay, so here's gonna be my response to the retard Smoothie false charge me with some bullshit, right? He made the claim, and I don't know, maybe if y'all were tracking, he made the claim that it is the case that God existing in one possible world and not all possible worlds is compatible with my argument. Now I'm gonna say I don't even need an argument for that. That's not even possible given the analytics. Because what it means to be God is that you exist in all possible worlds, right? When we quantify over the domain, we're quantifying over
Holy
all
circular
possible
definition.
worlds.
I deny
So
you.
when you say,
Are you
when you,
retarded?
that's just true. Hold on, stop speaking. That's true given the analytics.
Sound
So
like
God
fearless.
existing in one possible world and not all possible worlds is not even going to be the kind of thing that's possible given the analytics. And I could give you the P and not P if you want. So that's not even the
Wait, so
kind of thing that's
you
possible
define
under the
God to be
analytics.
a thing that exists in all possible worlds. I don't care for
I
the
said
time
that
limit.
from the
I was
onset.
kind of
Maybe you
trolling.
guys weren't.
Yeah,
Maybe you guys weren't tracking. I defined
Yeah,
it 3
I'm
times.
just
I'm going to define it
clarifying.
one more
People are
time.
tracking. We're trying to be precise here.
I
But
mean,
God
Hold
you
on.
just
we
I'm
means
going
already
to define
a
it.
defined
being
it.
that
I'm
exists
going
in
to
all
define it one
possible
more time.
worlds.
Hold on. I'm going to define it one
Mm.
more time. Maybe y'all aren't tracking because this would have never been an issue
Shit,
if y'all
rhetorical.
actually
That
listen
doesn't
to
work
the
if you're losing
definition.
that
Oh,
way, man.
God is not
So
So
rhetorical.
their critique
movie,
is that they didn't even
movie,
track.
stop speaking.
So
Wallahi.
I think
Mod,
rhetoric makes me you're
so
we
losing.
gonna
y'all
get
This nigga sound like
y'all just
Planet
mute
Sheen,
Uber real quick.
nerdy ass nigga.
just
Yeah,
let
y'all
Cap
start
just let
muting
Cap
people.
define it.
I
I'm
just
talking
go
about
ahead.
big
Let
sunlight
Dean,
fire
Dean,
glasses
start
having
muting
ass
people,
nigga.
please.
just
Moderate,
Happy
let
So
spectacle
Cap
ass
moderator,
go.
nigga.
moderator.
Let
Dean,
them
They're
I
not
talk.
even
find it
supposed to
crazy
be.
how
Okay, go
he
ahead.
thinks
Go
he
ahead.
overtalk me and
Can
I get
someone
server
else
muted
mod?
and you don't
Hold
server
on.
mute them. So
Wait, what'd you say, Dean?
I'm server muting everybody for a second. The only reason I didn't server mute them is because I had to get back to the window.
Oh, damn,
And you
that's
guys just
unfortunate.
started bargaining over
yo, new
time.
moderator, I'm not debating, nigga. This nigga just pissed me off. New
All
moderator.
right, all right, go ahead. Just go ahead, Cap.
So look, Smoothie, this never would have been a problem if you actually listen to the definition of God that I have, right? Because God existed in what possible or not all isn't even possible given the analytics. Because it's analytically true that God exists in all possible worlds. worlds. Right. So I'm going to define God one more time. And God is a necessary being. And what it means to be necessary is that you exist in all possible worlds and that you're eternal. Okay, you got it? So this whole tangent about how God could exist in what possible world, not all, that's not even possible under the analytics.
Okay.
So maybe you want to respond to that, Smoothie.
All right, see, all right.
And I do want to point out
Holy shit, nigga! He said Smoothie, not CH. You're not attacking his argument, bitch. Look, I'm so fucking confused why this fat nosed cheeseburger eating monkey is not understanding what's going on inside the argument. Look, if you're saying, for example, that it's analytically true, which means the enabling conditions for God to exist is Him existing in all possible worlds. If He necessarily exists inside of this world, it's analytically impossible for you to say that God exists inside of this world, but not all possible worlds. If you don't understand what a theistic debate is, it's denying your metric of God. If the other nigga's an atheist or agnostic, if you're saying that your God exists in all possible worlds, and somebody's saying, well, I deny your existence of God, I deny your God via the analytics or via the enabling conditions you're using or utilizing for God, then I'm saying, look, I can just simply say that God exists inside of this world, because it seems to be the case that your argument entirely, not the analytics of your argument entirely can be mutually compatible, or it can be compatible with what I'm saying, which is God being a contextual necessity, which is God exists inside of this world and not all worlds, right? You're just simply saying what the analytics did not match your contextual necessity for God. I understand that because you're using a different metric of God, and I'm saying I deny that God, you peon.
Well, that seems like
I think
you're
the entire
equivocating.
point is you have to
Wait,
define the
hold on.
semantics.
You're
Like, what do you
denying our
think, like,
definition.
Hold
possibility
on.
and
That
world
seems
means
like
here?
you're
Equivocating.
equivocating, Dance Movie, because when you evaluate the soundness of an argument, you want to say, look, given the terms and the way that they're stipulated by the interlocutor, is the argument sound and valid? If you want to say, look, I could just define necessity differently than you define it, then you wouldn't even be talking about God under argument.
This is a
Wait,
clarifying.
Smoothie,
Sounds like you're
This
equivocating.
is a clarifying question. What am I equivocating? See, shut the fuck up. What am I equivocating?
Yeah, the term God
No,
and the term necessity.
Hold on, bitch boy. I didn't.
so
I
that you
just
don't say
told you.
God to be.
Hold on. I just told you I'm not equivocating the term. I said I deny your metric of God's existence. If you're saying that God
We
exists
just
in all
wait. That's
possible worlds, necessary,
the
why the
term, retard.
fuck is this Teletubby speaking
That's
when
the
I'm talking?
Analytically true.
Hold on.
that's,
Shut your
that's
big
the
belly ass up
term,
while I'm
retard.
talking.
So
Look,
you're
look,
so you
look,
are
look,
Bubble
look.
guppy,
No,
chill out, chill out,
nobody
chill
hears
out.
what the fuck you're saying,
you
nigga.
didn't
Calm
defy
down.
God.
Look, stop.
You just
This
denies the
fucking
term.
nigga
What
cholesterol
we're
just goes
taking God
up
to
and
be
up,
is just
up and
the
up.
term that we
Every
say.
time this nigga
Now
I'm
you're
trying to
equivocating.
say, nigga sweating cheese ball grease. Shut the fuck up.
God,
Damn, nigga spitting on the mic.
Nigga
Yo, D,
bloodstream
you
is
gotta
such a
start
Nigga,
poker.
big lip
Somebody
loading.
start moderating, bro, please.
look again. I just said it's not an equivocation of terms. It's not an equivocation of your God and my God. It's not an equivocation of necessary and necessity which you're using. I'm
I just
simply saying,
explained
hold on, calm
equivocation.
down, you big head bitch. All I'm simply saying is that when you use your term necessity by saying God exists, God necessarily exists out of the actual world, which means that He necessarily exists out of all possible worlds, I deny that metric of God. I said the only God to which I do affirm is God exists inside of this actual world. Not just because He exists inside of this actual world means He exists inside of all possible worlds. I deny that metric of God, retard. What I'm
Okay,
telling
what
you is
is
that.
meant by God when you use
Well,
the
I'm
term?
telling by when I
When you
use
just
it,
use the term, what is meant by God?
the one to
Define
which
it.
I agree to, I got you, fat nigga. But the one to which I agree to, the one to which I agree to is God being a contextual necessity, which means He exists inside of
Why
this
does it matter what you agree to?
actual world. Shut the fuck up, dick neck
So
bitch.
given our
Hold on, why
definition,
are you
right?
speaking while I'm speaking?
Hold on, no. See, let him define the term.
Hold
I want to
on,
get out of this
Cheeto
topic.
face paint, bro. Just be quiet for a minute. Let him talk it out.
hold on. He asked me a question. I'm confused why CH, his teammate, is trying to refute back his argument. You fat
That
nigga.
ass Capp's Pokemon.
Oh God, nigga pulling up his fucking pom poms and cheerleading this shit. Look, what I'm saying
The
is that
commentary as well.
the definition or the God of which I agree to is I'm not saying that you're using this definition. The definition of God of which I agree to is Him being a contextual necessity, not necessary in all possible worlds. Right. So if you're saying that God exists inside of all possible worlds, I deny that metric of God, retard. What I'm telling you is I agree with contextual necessity, a version of God which exists inside of this actual world and not no other. I deny your
I think
existence,
yeah.
retard.
I think he's saying like
Okay,
the
so
whole
I just
like
typed
your
your
whole term
definition.
infringes
Hold
on
on,
his
wait.
term because
Hold
it's
on, wait.
necessary.
Shut up, nigga, because you scare your teammate about to get
I
exposed
didn't
for
say I deny your definition, you fat
Shut
nigga
up.
bitch. Why is he so fucking retarded?
Yo, moderator.
Oh God,
Niggas, please
niggas a pink mo.
mute both of these niggas, please. This moderator is fucking trash. So look, here's what we go do. You said God. I asked you to define the term God. You said God is a contextual necessity. That means not necessary at all possible worlds. Now I'm gonna explain why that's equivocated. What we mean by God. Because these analytics and the analytics that we're talking about are not going to be the kinds of things which are compatible. Which means, Smoothie, that you're equivocating. So when you use the term God, you have a completely different definition than the ones that are used in the argument. That's clearly equivocation. So I don't understand why you're equivocating and using a different definition of God when I already said when you evaluate the soundness of an argument, you want to say using the terms as they are defined by the interlocutor is the argument valid or sound. So you're not even evaluating the soundness of my argument at this point. Sounds like you're straw manning because you're using a different definition of God. So stop equivocating, little nigga, and actually focus up. Use our definition of God instead of this bullshit ass contextual necessity. Because nobody in here but you started talking about contextual necessity. Literally nobody. I did not stipulate that God is a contextual necessity. I said God is necessary, and what that means is that He exists in all possible worlds. So stop equivocating, fuck nigga. So go ahead and respond.
The fuck? Look, this nigga is not understanding. Before you start talking to me, do a little snip your fucking snot down your fucking esophagus. Look, what I'm telling
You got a big ass DVD or
hold on. You on mute,
something.
bitch. It's not your turn to speak. I don't know why the fuck this faggot ass nigga just used his fucking mics to unmute himself. Look, what I'm telling you. I'm not saying that you're using a contextual necessity for God. I don't know what's not being understood inside of the dialogue. Maybe I need to clarify simpler and simpler. What I'm saying is that the definition of what you're using for God, your term of God, which is God exists inside of all possible worlds, He's necessary in all possible worlds. I deny that version of God. One more time. I deny that version of God. I'm saying I take it to be the case that your version of God is it's non-motivating. It's also less plausible.
It's in the argument,
Hold on,
son.
I
You're
understand
denying that necessary
what the fuck? We can use
means
our eyeballs,
or
CH. I know it's
exists
an
in all
argument.
possible worlds
I
is
know it's an
analytically
argument, you
true.
fat neck
And
bastard. You sit
necessary
your dick
means
ass down while I'm talking, Wreck-It Ralph. Look, I'm saying I deny that version of God. So if you're using it for your argument, I deny the argument that that's going to lead to the case that God exists inside of all possible worlds. I said it's mutually compatible with your argument that God exists inside of one world, one actual world, and not all possible ones. That's not equivocation because I'm telling you, I'm outrightly telling you, I deny your version of God, retard. What the fuck are you not understanding? There's no
So
motivation.
stealing
You
what he's
actually
saying.
seem so stupid.
Hold
You're
on, let
actually
me just
so
steal man what
retarded.
he's
The way
saying.
you
The
say,
entire point is that he's attacking the scope and the inference of your God, right? If it is the case that he holds a definition of God, which is also
what inference did
necessary,
he
but in
attack?
confliction with your definition, but yours are both necessary, they can't both be necessary in the same case because, again, they just conflict each other in the same exact worlds, and that's be a contradiction. So he's asking, what's the
so
what's the
he adds a
abduction to use to
definition of
pick
God
your
in the
God over his
argument.
God?
Wait, that
That's the
actually
entire point.
sounds like
It's not
all he
equivocation.
said.
When
That's
then
all
he's
this
not
nigga
trying to
said.
retarded
refute what we
because
said.
Oh Jesus,
Wait,
that's all
he's
this
not
nigga
refuting.
said.
hold
He's
on,
not
wait,
Why is
hold on, wait,
refuting.
hold on,
your
wait.
why
Wait,
is
I'm
your
just gonna make this
conceptual
very clear.
analysis of God over?
Okay,
Okay,
I'm gonna
retard. I'm
mute.
gonna make this very clear.
Wait,
Oh,
Look,
hold on.
let me and Cap go. Let me and Cap go. It's okay.
so hold on. I got a question for you, Ernst. When Smoothie says he denies my version of God, is he denying any synthetic facts there, or is he denying the analytics?
You fat neck bitch.
It depends on his
Go
context,
ahead
what the
and answer
concept
that.
of what he's saying.
Look. Then I
But
have
either
to
way, I'll just steal man it and just like give the stronger like
So go ahead
objection
and
to
answer
what he's
that. Is
saying.
he denying synthetic or
look.
analytic? That's a binary question, by the way. It's only two
So it could
responses.
be
So go
either
ahead.
one. I'm not sure what he means, nigga. I'm not in his fucking brain.
Okay, so we
But
can
I
get
told you
Smoothie. We
before,
can
I
get
steal
clarified
manned it.
right now.
He'll
We
give
can
Yeah,
get
Smoothie the
clarified
hold
right
floor.
on. I
now.
steal man
Smoothie
the
the
scope
floor.
and the inference. Please
So
attack
go
that
give
point
Smoothie the
first
floor.
before
I
giving the
want you to
argument.
answer this
I don't know,
question
like nigga, why are
first.
you trying to be his sidekick? You're not even
We need
tracking
to
what is
we
being
need to
said.
be first.
Please
Look,
steal me my
Smoothie the mic.
the
contention,
question that
CH.
I'm
Please steal man
asking,
it.
Smoothie the mic.
Please steal
stop.
man
Smoothie
it.
the mic,
Stop. The
bitch.
question
Fuck.
that I'm asking is
Nigga, big ass
relative.
elephant with 3 nipples. The
Hold on.
fuck up, nigga, goofy ass nigga. Like
Hey,
you talk,
whoop
bitch.
That's
this
something.
nigga.
Like
So
what the
look, I'm gonna
look
respond. The
look.
question that I'm asking is aerothetically valid because it's relative to the substance of the dialectic. Right? I need to know when Smoothie makes this claim, right? So we could properly determine whether or not he is in fact equivocating, even though I believe he's equivocating, right? I want to know, Smoothie, when you say you deny our version of God, are you denying any synthetic facts or are you denying the analytics there?
Nigga, I'm not denying your analytics. I said this 18 times. I'm not denying your
Okay, so
analytics.
what
Look,
synthetic facts do you deny?
hold on, bitch. I'm not
What
done. You asked
synthetic
me a
facts are
question.
you
Hold
denying?
on, I'm not done. I don't understand why the cheerleader and monkeys just keep piping up every time I'm fucking speaking. Calm down. I don't got a fucking big ass burger inside of my hand for CH to be grasping at. Sit your fat hand ass down. What I'm telling you is that I don't deny your analytics. I'm not denying it. I'm saying we can accept your analytics of God, but I'm
Okay.
telling you that we deny your version of God. I
Okay,
deny
it's been
that.
said there by
Okay,
Brandon.
so
Now
look,
let
I deny.
him
Hold on.
I
finish.
didn't even
I'm saying this
that
is
even
not motivation. I'm saying this is not motivation
that's
to
not
go
even
to the
getting
So,
conclusion.
clarity.
Hold on. I'm saying
oh
this
my
is not
god.
motivation
So
to go to the
you can
conclusion
accept
that
the
your God
analytics.
exists
So
because
wait,
it's mutually compatible.
given?
Hold on, bitch. Hold on, bitch. I'm
Oh my
saying it's
god.
not your motivation to believe that your God exists because it's mutually compatible with your argument without using your analytics. It's mutually compatible with saying that
Without
my
using
God
our
exists.
analytics. That's like saying without like using what's stipulated on.
That's clearly equivocating, Dan,
That's not a.
because
What do
when
you
you
take?
evaluate the
What do you
soundness of
take
the argument, you want to
equivocation to
use
be?
your interlocutor's analytics.
Hold on,
Are you
hold on.
using it?
What do you take equivocation to be?
Yeah, it's where you invoke different analytics outside of the interlocutor's analytics
What
to
the?
try to disprove part of their argument, right? Obviously, nowhere in my argument do I talk about contextual necessity.
No,
That's
bitch,
just
you're
right.
real
But I
wrong.
have another question. I have another
Hold on,
question.
hold on. Okay, I'm gonna tell you
And
why
I
you're
asked
wrong.
you, I'm
Hold on, I'm
not
gonna tell you
finished
why you're wrong, then you
speaking,
can ask
bitch.
your other
I'm
question.
not finished.
You
Moderator,
said,
mute this
nigga, what do you
nigga.
mean moderator? You
Moderator,
Moderator, I'm
said
not
something.
finished speaking. This nigga's interrupted. Thank you. So look, when you said, I asked you, when you say you deny a version of God, are you denying any synthetic facts or analytic? You say you're not denying any analytic facts there. So what I'm going to ask you is, what synthetic fact are you denying? You can unmute him. He can answer that. What synthetic fact are you denying?
Nigga, before I was muted, I was answering something. I'm so fucking confused while I was muted. Look, I'm saying you're using equivocation wrong, right? Equivocation is using the word with a different meaning in the same argument in a way that it creates confusion or misleading conclusion. It's not my argument isn't doing that. My contention isn't doing that. I'm saying we can use your definition of God, but if I did give a different analysis, not using your argument, I'm saying I'm giving a different analysis to which God can be under. It's mutually compatible with your argument of God. I'm not saying that it's denying your analytics. I'm not saying that I'm using different analytics insofar that it confuse or mislead your
And what he
conclusion.
meant by
Look,
equivocation.
I'm telling you I'm saying that's what it said by equivocation. That's why I said it's not equivocating. Retard. What I'm telling you is that it's not equivocation under the semantics, and I'm not equivocating the terms of semantics into yours insofar that it creates a misleading conclusion. What I'm saying is that you have a description of God. You have an enabling condition for God. We can also use an enabling condition in a description of God. And I'm saying under your whole argument, not your analytics, under your argument for God, it's mutually compatible with the description we can give for God also. I'm
No,
not
it's not.
Being meta
No, it is
argumentated.
not.
That's all
No,
he's
it is
saying.
not
okay, hold
compatible.
on.
Let me
Anyway, I'm not
explain
done.
why.
Hold on. Griff, I'm not done. I'm
This
not done.
nigga Smoothie is so
I don't
fucking
understand
dumb.
why I don't
Given
understand why
the
they're
analytics
while I'm
question.
talking. I'm not done. Also, you just said no, it's not. So we're getting somewhere. Instead of just saying going under the blunder by saying that I'm equivocating terms, which I just explained to you that I'm not, we can go on to
Oh, you
why.
are still equivocated, but look, let me explain why it's not going to be the kind of thing
Look,
which
okay,
is
why
compatible.
is he talking while I'm talking? I'm confused. Look,
Capp, let him finish.
he just said that he just said that it's not more likely under my conclusion of what God is. We're getting somewhere now. It's not equivocation. I just explained to him why it's not equivocation and why I'm not equivocating the terms, which means using the same word with a different meaning in the same argument in a way that creates
He
confusion or
didn't say
misleading
that,
the
by the way.
conclusion. I'm
So
telling you
he's
that
not
I'm
even
not
addressing
equivocating
Capp.
in that
So
sense. It's not semantically equivocation. So, but I'm telling him my argument for God, like if we have an argument for God by saying, well, God is a contextual necessity, if he have an argument for God by saying that God exists inside of all possible worlds, we're simply saying that we deny that version of God, and his argument is mutually compatible with what we define or what we give as God, the enabling condition for God. I'm not equivocating the semantics. We completely deny your argument.
Okay, so I'm going to explain
No,
something
hold
for
on,
you.
hold on, Cat. Just to
No,
clarify, the
I'm not
entire
finished.
point is that under the framework, the analytics are fine, but meta argumentation wise, it's not going to be fine because if your framework takes God to be that thing, and his framework takes God to be this thing, but your God is going to be necessary because it's in all possible worlds. It's going to infringe on his version of God. That's why
You
he's saying
see,
what's
so,
going to be
so
the
y'all are so
justification for that
retarded,
part of
and
God,
Okay.
or sorry, that type of God.
No, wait, I'm not saying. I'm gonna respond now. I want. Yo, D, I want you to mute both these niggas so they don't interrupt. Thank you. All right. So here's what we're gonna do. Right. I'm gonna explain why your definition of God is actually not even compatible with the argument. The reason why it's not compatible is because the way that I constructed the premises, I have what's called a stipulative definition. Stipulative definitions are going to be the kind of definitions where it's relative to the interlocutor. Right. It's relative to the agent who's constructing the argument. So when you say, "Oh, well, I can use your argument but operate under a different analytics of the argument," would it follow? That's not even going to be the kind of thing that is compatible because the argument uses stipulative definition. But you can unmute them.
Okay.
and what synthetic facts do you deny Smoothie since you said that you can accept the analytics and
But
Right.
that's the entire point. I mean, I don't think the whole analytic
no,
synthetic thing really matters in the Steelman.
he
The
doesn't
entire
deny
point
it.
is, look, if he
No,
posits some
we're
kind of
wondering the
synthetic
synthetic
fact
fact
towards his God and yours is necessary, that's going to infringe on his God because it could posit some kind of fact or property that contradicts his God, possibly speaking. Obviously, possible contradiction can exist. It's going to be incoherent. So it has to be the case that he abducts the reason why his God exists over our version of God. That's the entire point.
It's that simple. And also, when you say that your argument or your analytics is stipulative, which means that it's stipulated inside of the argument for your God to run through. It's understandable that you're using a specific analytic for God, but inside of your definition, inside of your argument for God, the definition is not stipulative. What you're simply saying is that your God has a stipulated definition, not inside of the argument that the analytics are stipulative. But I'm telling you that we can accept by virtue of your argument without using a stipulated definition because we obviously denied that version of God. We deny your version of God existing. Without using that specific analytics, I'm saying that it's mutually compatible with my God's existence. So if you have a stipulated definition, and obviously it's antithetical toward whatever term or whatever thing we use for God's existence. But if I'm saying that you don't have a stipulated definition for God, and all you have is an argument for God and why He's necessary, we deny that argument. If you're using that stipulated definition,
we
So
can
here's what we're
motivate
going to
the
do. I'm
argument. So
going
if
to
you just want
explain
us to
to you.
motivate the
Hold on.
argument, we can do that.
Hold on,
okay,
CH, chill. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going
nigga,
to ask you this
CH
very
knows what to
simple
do.
question.
CH knows what to do, which is
Over
motivating an
talking
argument. Cap
Oh
moderator,
doesn't.
God, he a
moderator,
good boy.
moderator, moderator,
A
moderator,
nigga, a good pet,
moderator,
good little
moderator.
slave.
Because CH knows how
Moderator,
to
mute
progress the
both these
Silly
dialogue.
niggas.
dog face ass nigga.
Moderator. Thank you. Griff, why the fuck are you so slow at muting these niggas? You
Playing
pissing
a
me
game.
off.
You guys should be more respectful.
So look, here what we go do. I'm going to ask you this very simple question, and I want a yes or no, and I want it binary, right? Or maybe you could say you're agnostic, in which case I have motivation. Given what we mean, given the stipulated definitions that we're actively invoking right now in the context of the dialectic, what me and CH mean by the terms in the argument, do you accept the premises? Do you have any contentions with the true value of the premises, Smoothie? Yes or no? And then after that, you go explain why. And then after that, I'm going to motivate each one of the premises. So do you have any contentions with the true values under our definitions?
Yes, you bimbo balastic bitch. I deny I'm half with your premises. I have what do you not understand, you fat neck bastard? I have contentions with your
So
premises.
Say that nigga brain has no gray matter.
Hold on.
Oh
Patrick
God.
shiny brain ass nigga, boy. Patrick Star brain ass nigga.
Hold on.
Moderator, please do your fucking job.
Well,
So look,
I didn't think
that's what
they
we're
were
gonna do. You gonna explain to me why? Okay, name a single premise that's false under my definitions. Name a single premise that's false under my definitions. Because you just say you had contention with some of the true values under premises. So name a single premise that's false, and then you go get the argument for why it's false under my definitions. By the way, my definitions. So go ahead, Smoothie or Ernst. Either one of y'all can fulfill this burden. Highly doubt you're gonna be able to, but yeah. You can unserve mute these niggas.
Am I unserver muted? Can anybody hear me?
Yep. Name a single premise that's false, Pussy. Under my definitions.
Under your definition of necessity, I deny P2. Also deny. We just gonna deny P2. I'm gonna get into the other ones to which I deny, but we can deny P2, which is a contingent thing is possible, and the possible contingent thing can have an external explanation. Obviously, you want to say that the possible contingent thing can have an external explanation, and the external explanation is gonna be a necessary being insofar that it's possible. I mean, he necessarily exists of all possible worlds. I deny that.
Okay, what's the argument that premise was false?
So give motivation to why P2 is gonna be true.
Are you making the claim that it's false, or do you want me to motivate it?
You also said that it's not mutually compatible with a contextual necessity, even though it is.
Wait, I'm asking you, are you saying that the premise is false, or do you need me to motivate it? Which one?
If I'm saying that I have contentions, and I clarify by saying I want you to motivate P2, use your fucking social
I can motivate it. That's fine. So look, here's what we go do. So let's go back. Let's see what premise 2 is actually saying. A contingent thing is possible, and that possible contingent thing could have some external explanation. Now, possibility is the type of notion where all that means is that the proposition doesn't output as false under at least one evaluation, and the postulates in that evaluation are going to be internally coherent. Now, all we have to do is plug in.
What evaluation are you referring to? Like what standard?
Yeah, we're talking about conjunctive truth table, right? And so all we have to do is make a conjunctive truth table with postulates P and Q, which is going to be postulate P going to be a contingent thing is possible, and postulate Q going to be a possible contingent thing could have some external explanation. And then after that, we can see that if we evaluate all the possible truth values for the conjunction, right, it's going to output as true, right? Maybe you could conceptualize it because I really don't feel like pulling up the truth table. But if you're able to conceptualize, you can obviously see that.
The entire thing is, are you saying give it the conjunction?
I'm not finished, bitch. I'm not finished. Maybe you could conceptualize it, right? And then after you conceptualize, you can see that under what evaluation, right? And one of the rows that outputs that's true. And the postulates are obviously going to be the type of things which are internally coherent, right? There's obviously doesn't seem to conflict with any of the axioms of the laws of logic given the analytics. So, yep, there you go.
Ernest has something to say, but I was going to say something either way. Look, I was going to say, after I get done saying what I got to say, let Ernest talk because Capp was talking for like 15 minutes, giving his whole anime backstory and shit. Look, I'm saying contingent being, which is something that exists but cannot have failed to exist. Something can be explained contingently because existence doesn't require something necessity or necessary. Like only other contingent factors. Like if I say, for example, the existence depends on the other things. The contingent being is produced, sustained, or caused by other things that could have been different. Right, so there's no need for necessity. The explanation doesn't have to end in something that must exist. It can stop at a network of contingent causes. There's nothing impossible or logical.
Notice how we have. Okay, that's compatible.
He's saying why is infinite Rebus going to be vicious insofar as going to posit a necessary being?
Hold on. What are these retards talking about? I'm not attacking what you're saying right now because I said Ernest has something to say. You fat neck, fat nose bitch. What I'm telling you is that I have my own argument to which I take it to be the case that I can say, well, a contingent being can cause another contingent being, and it's not more probable to say that a necessary being is going to be the causation or the causation for the set of contingent beings. I'm saying Ernest was saying.
Yeah, wait, that's compatible with the argument. We're just saying a contingent thing.
No, it's not, nigga. No, it's not.
Wait, no. Okay, are we saying that a contingent thing has an external explanation? We're just saying that a contingent thing could have an external explanation. Given
moderator, mute these niggas while my teammate is talking.
Ernest was talking first.
I'm talking though, nigga. No, I'm talking.
I literally said when I get done, Ernest has something to say. I don't understand.
So you're not giving a critique.
I
So
don't
you just went on
understand
for a
why
whole minute.
with his fat ass
Hold
hands.
on.
Just wait, like damn.
Just wait for him to get finished, CH. Also, CH
fuck?
interrupted them, not the other way around.
Go
All
ahead.
these fat magnum boogers having ass niggas, bro. Look, the entire point is I heard Capp mention like a conjunctive truth table, right? Is that gonna be a truth table index towards a conjunction, aka a P and Q? And if so, what's the P and Q going to be referenced towards? And for Smoothie, I think all he's saying this statement is going to be that like he doesn't take infinite regress to be vicious in that sense. So that's going to be the case. The non-necessary mechanism is going to be posited.
Infinite regress or contingent. So look, here's
hold on. Answer me first, though. Not his point.
I'm going to answer both of these. I'm going to answer everything you just said, bitch.
Focus on me first.
Shut up, nigga, while I'm talking. So look, maybe if you weren't tracking, I just told you what the postulate P and Q were when I was giving my motivation. Right? I told you what postulate P stood for and what postulate Q stood for. But maybe we could tell you again. And yes, when I say conjunctive truth table, I'm obviously talking about a conjunction, retard. So I'm going to tell you what postulates P and Q are, and then I'm going to explain why this infinite regress talk is not actually pertinent to the argument. Right? It doesn't actually deny any of the premises. So here's what we're going to do. So postulate P is going to be there is a contingent thing. And postulate Q is going to be this contingent thing has an external explanation, right? And obviously, it outputs as true or at least one evaluation, and the postulates are both internally coherent as well as the conjunction of the two atomic facts. So this is what we go do, right? I'm going to explain now why an infinite regress is actually compatible with the argument, because the only synthetic fact that you get in this argument is the conclusion. So when you talk about synthetic facts, those actually aren't going to be in conflict with any of the premises, right? None of these premises commit you to saying that there is or is not an infinite regress of explanation. But also, I want to notice the caveat that we have, right? External explanation. External explanations are different than explanations applicable. Those are the type of explanations where the explanans and the explanandum are not of the same class. So maybe if any one of y'all want to respond to that, I also want to point out the track and error from Aaron. So yeah, Smoothie, you go ahead and respond to that, pussy. But also, you can respond to that, or you could tell me where in the motivation that I gave that I
What I want to respond to. Look, you said this doesn't defeat what you said because the synthetic fact comes inside of like it's not in virtue of the fact of the premise too. My contention was literally
He didn't say that.
swallow. My contention was literally saying in virtue
He
of the
didn't say.
fact. Hold on, shut the fuck up, you big titty bitch. I said my contention was in virtue of the fact that you say that there is a necessary being that exists in all possible worlds. I'm denying P2 insofar that it's leading to the conclusion that there exists a necessary being that exists in all possible worlds. So infinite regression is
Wait,
a complete contingent.
we never said that. Our
I
argument
don't
isn't
know why
committed to
this
that.
fat nosed nigga is speaking while I'm speaking.
Our P2,
Hold
our
on, Cap.
P2, right?
Hold on. Shut the fuck up. Cap, just let me speak. He ain't say nothing about CH fat ass. I'm arguing in virtue of the fact that God doesn't exist as a necessity in all possible worlds by denying P2 because you say using your analytics of God, do I deny P2? Yes, I deny P2 because I don't think that there exists a necessary being that exists in all possible worlds. So yes, infinite regress is impossible for your argument.
No, it's not. But that is the end of the debate. Judge, go ahead and give verdict, nigga.
You guys don't want to give conclusions?
I mean, I could get my conclusion first. That's fine. So,
Yes.
in my conclusion, I'll just go respond to what Smoothie just said. He said that an infinite regress is incompatible with the argument. It's logically impossible given the argument. That's not even true, right? Also, he mentioned causality, and there nowhere does our argument talk about causality. It talks about counterfactual dependence, which I don't accept that that's the kind of, I don't accept that model of, I don't accept that that's an accurate model of causality as a whole. So we would need motivation for that. He was equivocating. He was using different analytics than the argument. And then I told him, well, given what we mean by the terms any of the premises false, he said yes. He proceeded to get some bullshit ass motivation, which obviously didn't establish the premise as false. I also motivated the premise, and he didn't respond to my motivation. So yeah, that's the end of mine. I'm gonna pass it over to CH after these pussy niggas get their closers. Also, I just want to point out that was terrible moderation on Dean's end and Poker's end. That was very bad moderation. These niggas kept interrupting, but yeah, go ahead, CH.
I was a moderator, just to be clear.
You can unstart from him.
Yeah, so at the start of the debate, they made a very like low level critique of like not using the analytics. Cap explained given the analytics argument is going to be valid. And yeah, and sound. So we did motivate everything that like was being said, and we kind of cleared up the confusion there at the start. And then I think when they realized that we did clear up the confusion, and then when they realized that they're really confused, they just kind of left off at that point. And then when we went on to P2, they went on to make the very low-level blunder of saying that external explanation isn't needed. Look, our premise wasn't committed to saying that. Look, we like that can be compatible with what premise 2 at least wants to say. And me and Capp explained it to him. And Capp even motivated premise 2, and they didn't really respond to it. They kind of made the low-level objection that I'd like defeated like pretty easily. And yeah, they were equivocating the entire time. They were really, really confused. Like maybe we need to like teach them on the argument because they don't really know how to critique it. They were really confused. And then they kind of did this like infinity strategy where they just like scream and like just yell, like just like call us like slurs, but not really critique the argument. I mean, yeah, that's like pretty bad for them, but I think it's pretty obvious like who won. Yeah.
I'm gonna give my conclusion that Ernest can go right after me. Look, I told him that infinite regression is impossible for the argument to God exists in all possible worlds. I'm not saying it's impossible in a logical sense. I'm saying it's impossible to the argument because typically when you want to say that God exists, in the argument which he gave was saying that God requires a non-dependent necessary terminus that explain why everything exists at all, right? If my argument is simply saying that infinite regression is simply saying that things can be explained, I mean, infinite regression in a non-vicious sense, that everything can be explained contingently and it can goes on infinitely insofar that contingent thing prior can be explained by another contingent thing prior, which means that it's non-vicious. It's completely antithetical. It's completely impossible to your position of God. You said that I use causation. No, the fuck I did not, you fat neck bitch. And you said that I equivocated. No, I did not. I literally explained the reason to why I didn't equivocate. I said equivocation is using your semantic or your analytics insofar that it misleads the conclusion being true or misleads the conversation, misleads the conclusion. I said under your analytics of God, under your semantics of God, I deny your God's existence, but I also gave a counter view by saying, well, we can presuppose that God exists in a contextual sense, but doesn't exist in all possible senses. He tried to tell me, he's asked me to deny, I told him I deny P2 insofar that God exists. God exists in all possible worlds. I deny P2. He said that infinite regression isn't impossible for his God's existence. I just explained why it is, etc. What else did this monkey say? What else did we talk about? No, they actually they moved on.
I don't even know.
They moved on from the equivocation because they realized that they was fucking retarded at that point. Then we went on to like P2 and shit. Yeah, that's all. Like we deny P2, and so in virtue of the fact that God is going to exist in all possible worlds, we gave an argument to why that is not going to be the case. I also give an argument to why his P2 can be mutually compatible, denying the analytics of his God, or not denying it without using the analytics of his God is mutually compatible with our position. But if he's using the analytics of his God, we deny his version of God. And I gave reasons to why P2 is unmotivating. And I gave infinite regression and how it's non-vicious, and how it can still work.
All right, so for my conclusion, the entire point was first I tried to get like precise on the definitions, like what does possible and world mean. Niggas didn't answer. Like he has big ass dumbo ears. You can't hear me for some reason. That's okay. Number two, he talked about God just being like, at least one necessary being. I explained to the vicious equivocation there because again, if it's gonna mean at least one, that opens the door to there being multiple necessary beings at the same time. If that's gonna be the case, it could be the case where necessary being N1 contradicts necessary being N2. All right, that's going to be the case. It's going to be a vicious equivocation because, again, it's a different referent with the same property he's referring to. They contradict each other. So, yeah, that's going to be vicious in itself. The other thing was he said infinite regress for some reason was going to be like semantic thing? No, the fuck, it's not. It's literally mathematical. It's syntactical. So, again, that's not going to posit any, necessary mechanism. So, they're wrong on that. Another thing was, I tried to steelman Smoothie's objection with the scope and inference. They didn't really attack that. Like I said, if we have a different definition of God, and his God exists in all possible worlds, right? It's going to infringe on our definition, which could contrast his definition, or at least, the being he's referring to. He didn't really address that either. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And Capp, not Capp, this nigga CH, he's just being a psychic the entire time. They got his pom-poms on, his high heels, he was pearl clutching, nigga some shit. But yeah, for me, I mean, they were just getting bait. That's pretty much it.
All right, Griff.
Yeah, that was a long debate. That was a very relative debate, though. I'm not gonna lie. But
Yeah,
I
I
do
agree.
think that Capp won. I don't think any of the faders that the opponents brought up just really landed. It's like the first one, they talked about the equivocation. And then the first 5 minutes, they made an obvious equivocation on how the argument needed S5 to get off the ground, based off how they used necessary or something, which I didn't find that critique to land. And I would hold the same views for the rest of the points. I don't think they motivated the critiques enough, especially the infinite regress point.